Today's daf is daf Kuf Yud Zayin, and we begin here with the Mishnah on the bottom of Kuf Tes Zayin Omid Beis. And we're talking about a pasuk in Vayikra Perek Gimel, Kol Chelev v'Chol Dam Lo Sochelu. So the Torah is prohibiting both Chelev and Dam, and the Mishnah wants to compare the laws of Chelev and Dam. And the Mishnah says, Chomer b'chelev mi b'dam v'chomer b'dam bi b'chelev. Meaning each one of these two prohibitions has a chumrah that the other one doesn't have. And the Mishnah now goes ahead and delineates. So let's first talk about chomer b'chelev. What stringencies do we have in chelev that we don't have in dam? And the Mishnah here on Daf Kuf Yud Zayin says mo'alim both. There's me'ilah with regard to chelev, because the chelev of kodshim has basically the same status as the basar of kodshim, because chelev is considered basar. And if one enjoys the benefit of that chelev for his own personal purposes, then he's chayav me'ila. Means he has to bring a korban ola, which is called korban asham, which is called an asham me'ilos that we mention every morning from that chapter in Zvachim. But there's no me'ila with regard to dam. Now, that's not so simple, as we'll see. There is me'ila in dam, but only at a later stage. So we'll see. Chayavin oleh mishum pigul nosar v'tameh. With regard to chelev, if let's say you had a basar of a korban that was pigul, right? We've discussed many times. We'll just very quickly go over it. Pigul means when the Kohen during one of the four avodos has a machshav of chutz l'zmano or chutz l'mkomo, then the Torah prohibits the meat of that korban with a chiyuv kares, which is called pigul. And of course, chelev is part of the basar, and therefore it's included under the Isur pigul. Nosar, if he leaves over the meat beyond its time allotment, which depends upon whether you're talking about shlamim or chatos, asham, etc., then chelev is part of the basar, and you're chayev for eating nosar. And tomei, if let's say he has kodshim that he himself is tomei tumas haguf, and he eats the kodshim, and for that matter, if he eats the chelev, and he's chayev. Masha'enki b'dam. So dam of kodshim are not included in all the above, which would mean that dam of kodshim is not considered subject to me'ilah. So let's say, for example, he took the dam of kodshim that has to be sprinkled on the mizbeach, and instead he used it as a fertilizer, then he would not be chayav me'ilah. So he doesn't bring a korban asher me'ilos. The same thing would apply in pigul or in nosar or in tomei. So these are the chumras of chelev that don't apply to dam. Next, chomer b'dam. What's the chumra of dam that doesn't apply to chelev? Shadam noeg b'behema chai v'ov. And I'm going to skip a few words for a second. V'chelev en noeg el b'behema bilvad. So that the Torah prohibits chelev in the pasuk called ochel chelev min ha-behema, and therefore you're only chayev for eating chelev of behema, but not for chelev of chaya or oaf. And not only that, in the case of chelev, and we go back to that one word I left out in the Mishnah. Chelev eino noeg ela b'behema tahora bilvad. The Iser of Chelev only applies to a kosher animal. So a non-kosher animal, if you eat its chelev, obviously you're chayev for eating a non-kosher animal, but you're not chayev an additional Iser for chelev. But let's go back to dam in the four words that we skipped. And with regard to dam, bein tmeim, bein tahorim, which means that if you eat the dam of a non-kosher animal, for example, let's say you eat the dam of shrotzim or dogim and so forth. So then, in addition to the Iser dam, I'm sorry. So then, yeah, yeah. In addition to the Iser of shrotzim, you're also violating an Iser of dam. Minani Mili, the Gemara wants to know, how do we know that with regard to chelev there is an Iser Me'ila, an Achiv Me'ila? In other words, we want to know for sure from the Torah perspective that there is a basis for the conclusion that chelev is basar as far as Me'ila is concerned. Omar of Yanai, the Omar Kra. Okay, now we're going to quote a pasuk in the parsha of Shlomim. And the pasuk says, Kasher Yuram Mishor Zevach Hashlomim. And the Torah is telling us that the par of the Kohen Gadol is to be equated with a shar of Shlomim. Right? So shar is, in a case of Shlomim, would l'chora not be subject to Me'ila, but from the fact that the Torah equates the shar of Shlomim with the par of Kohen Gadol, Hareze Bol Lamed, this is coming to teach us, V'nimsa Lamed, Makish Shor Zevach Shlomim Lepar Kohen Mashiach. Ma par Kohen Mashiach yesh bo Me'ila, Af Shor Zevach Shlomim yesh bo Me'ila. Okay, fine. What we know now is that with regard to the par chatos of the Kohen Gadol, we have Me'ila. Why do we have Me'ila in the par chatos of a Kohen Gadol? Because a chatos is kodshe kodshim, and there's Me'ila in kodshe kodshim. Shlomim, on the other hand, is kodshim kalim. And therefore, if not for this equation, this hekesh, we would not know to derive the conclusion that Shlomim is subject to Me'ila. Because as kodshim kalim are concerned, it's Mammon Bailim. It really belongs to the Bailim. For example, the Bailim eat the carbon. They're not Kohanim, and yet they're allowed to eat the basar carbon, and it's a mitzvah to do so. So this is what the Torah is teaching us. And again, we have to assume that chelev is part of the shor. Correct? Because chelev is basar. So basically, Minani Mili, let's go back to the original question of the Gemara. Minani Mili, the Gemara is asking not about the equation between chelev and basar, that was a given, but rather whether chelev could apply even to kodshim kalim, even to kodshim kalim. Whether whether the din and the chiv of me'ila would apply even to kachim kalim. Amalei Reb Chanina. So Reb Chanina is a little bit bothered by the fact that Rav Yanai had to stretch his arm out to the equation between the power of Kohen Gadol and the shor of Shlomim to derive this conclusion. Ki ura zu sheshana Rebbe? Were you somehow put off by the derivation of Rebbe? Rebbe darshaned the extra word kol chelev Lashem. Why did the Torah have to add the word kol, says Rebbe? L'ravos emure kodshim kalim l'me'ila. Emurim here means, in our context, chelev. Chelev is burnt on the Mizbeach. And if there's kodshim kalim, like, for example, a shlomim, then the Torah is telling us, according to Rebbe through the word kol, that the chelev or the murim of kodshim kalim are subject to me'ila. And we should really read the pasuk. Let's see if I can find the pasuk here. Yeah, Daber el bnei Yisrael lemar kol chelev shor v'keves va'ez lo sochelu. Okay, fine. Now Abaye is going to try to combine the drasha and the derivation of Rebbe of kol chelev together with that of Rav Yanai and equating shor of Shlomim with the par Kohen Gadol. Amar Abaye, we need both. The ikos of Rachmana chelev, if we didn't have the extra word kol that Rebbe uses to derive that there is me'ilin kodshim kalim, hava, I mean, I would have thought chelev in, but yoseres ushtei kloyos lo. So there are other parts of the carbon that are burnt on the Mizbeach, and they are called a murim, and that is, besides the chelev, yoseres ushtei kloyos, the diaphragm and the two kidneys. So if the Torah says that chelev is considered Lashem because it has to be burnt on the Mizbeach as a part of the Murim, then Lashem means that if you derive benefit from it, you are stealing from Hashem, and that's called Me'ila. But we need a special ribui for Yoseres Ushtei Kloyos, and the Havamina was that these are not explicitly singled out as a murim. Only chelev was singled out, and therefore it's not kodesh lashem, and therefore there would be no me'ila. Therefore, we need the drush of Rebbe for the word kol. And how does Rebbe derive this? From the extra word kol. Now we have another pasuk, which is Rav Yanai's pasuk, Kasha Yuram. So why do I need Kasha Yuram? Because again, I want to expand the Isur Me'ila to include Yoseres and Shtei HaKloyos. Is Koser Rachmana Kasha Yuram to tell me that anything that has to go up on the Mizbeach, in the case of Shlomim, for example, the Yoseres and Shtei HaKloyos, is included in the Isur Me'ila. Why? Because it's equated with the chatas of the Kohen Gadol. Now let's go the other way around. Now that you've equated the shlomim with the chatas of the Kohen Gadol, and you derived me'ila, so why do I need kol chelev? Says Abaye, ikos rachmana kasher yuram hava mina. Okay, now we get into a slightly different branch, which is called chelev aliyah. Chelev alya means the chelev of the tail, Tail. So Hava Mina, I would have thought that chelev alya, the lesser b'shar, right? The entire equation that Rav Yanai postulates is based on shor to par. Well, guess what? There's no din of chelev alya with regard to shor. And therefore, since the tail chelev doesn't apply to the case of a shor, it should not be subject to me'ilah. Now, what's the chiddush that when you say what's the havamina that it should not be subject to me'ilah? I mean, there is no din of chelev alya and shor, but there is a din of chelev alya in keves, in a sheep. And therefore, the tail of a sheep is, in the case of kodshim, is included under that which is burnt on the mizbeach. But with regard to other animals, including a shor or an aze, or let's say a par, right? There's no offering of the tail of the aliyah. So therefore, if we only had Rav Yanai's exposition, and we're talking about including in Me'ilah even the shlomim animal, but we would not apply it to across the board to include the aliyah. So, for example, if we have the aliyah of a sheep, we would not know that I'm sorry, not the aliyah of the sheep. Let's say the chelev of the aliyah of the sheep. We would not know that that's subject to me'ilah based on the equation to shor, because shor doesn't have aliyah, and therefore we would not know that a keves would have aliyah. And therefore I need Rebbe's drush of Kos Rachmana Kol Chelev to tell you that even the chelev of the aliyah of a sheep is also designated for Lashem, and therefore if it's designated Lashem, it's Me'ilah. Amalei Rav Mari, Rav Zvid, Rav Mari asks Rav Zvid the following question: I aliyah ikre chelev. If now you're telling me that when the Torah says kol chelev, it's coming to include aliyah, meaning that the tail itself is called chelev, is titzar ba'achila. Why don't we go a step further and say that once the chelev aliyah of a sheep is included under kol chelev, then that applies not just to me'ilah, but also to kol chelev lo so chelev. Now, apparently, the Gemara is assuming that there is no iser achila with regard to the chelev of the aliyah, even in the case of sheep. Amalei. So this was a question that was posed by Rav Mari to Rav Zvid. So Rav Zvid responds, Olech hamakra. Therefore, we need another pasuk, which is in Vayikra Perak Zion. It says, Kol chelev shor v'keves v'ez. That the Torah says, again, I'll read the whole pasuk. Here it is. Daber al bnei Yisrael lemar kol chelev shor v'kesev v'ez lo sochelu. So there's an equation here between the chelev of shor, the chelev of keves, and the chelev of ez. All three are equal. To tell me that the lo sochelu applies only when you have it equal in all three cases. Davar hashav b'shor v'keves v'ez. Now in keves, we have an aliyah. And you might say that the aliyah should be considered osir b'achila under the pasuk called chelu is also chelu. But no, since the Torah also added A's and Shar in one breath, it tells you that only that part of the animal, which is common to both Shar and A's, not just the Kesev, which means we're talking about Chelev, but not the Chelev of the Aliyah, that's included in Losel Chelev. However, the Gemara offers an alternative derivation in the name of Ashi, Chelev ha'aliyah ikre, but Chelev stoma lo ikre. In other words, the Torah calls it Chelev ha'aliyah, but the Torah doesn't call it Chelev stam. Chelev stam means Chelev doesn't include aliyah. It's only when it says Chelev aliyah in the pasuk, like it says. I don't have the pasuk right here in front of me, but anyway, it says Chelev aliyah, and it's not included on the Chelev. So when the Torah says Kol Chelu Lo Tol Chelu, it doesn't include the Chelev of the aliyah in the case of a sheep. So the Gemara asks, "Elameata lo yimutu ba." No, so why do you say that it's included under Me'ilah, meaning even though Me'ilah applies to Chelev, and you just finished telling me that the Chelev of the Aliyah is not considered Chelev, so then why is it included under Me'ilah? So everything just now fell apart in terms of Rav Ashi, and now we go back to the original understanding of Rav Zvid, El Machvarta, Kirav Zvid, that the reason why Chelev of Aliyah is not included in the Isra Achil of Kol Chelu Lo Chelu is because it also says A's and Shor, and there's no Aliyah in A's and Shor. Now, Mashen Kibid Dam, there's no Me'ilah in Dam of Kodshim, Minani Mili. How did the Mishnah know from the Torah that there's no Isra Me'ilah in Dam? Omar Ula, the Omar Kra, Lachem. Whenever the Torah uses the word Lachem, it's excluding Me'ilah. Why? Because Me'ilah means Lashem, and you can't steal it from Hashem. Lachem means it's yours. Shalachem Yeheh. So let's see the pasuk inside. It says, Kol Nefesh Habasa Badamhu, Vanina Sativ Lachem, Ala Mizbeach Lechapal Nafshel Sechem, etc. So with regard to Dam, it says Lachem. Whenever it says Lachem, this is classic, it's coming to exclude Me'ilah. However, the Bei Rabbi Shmuel says, I don't even need the drasha from Lachem. It says Lechaper. Right, again, going back to the pasuk, called Ki Nefesh Habasa Badamhu, Vanina Sativ Lachem Al Mizbech Lechaper Al Nafshel Sechem, Lekapor Nesativ V'lo Leme'ilah. Rabbi Yochanan Omar Kra, I have another pasuk. Who? Okay, let's read the pasuk again. It says, Ki nefesh habasa bedam hu vadina sativ lechem es hamizbeach lechaper al nafshel sechem ki adam hu b'nefesh yechaper hu mipnei kapara kili acher. Oh, so now Rabbi Yochanan talks about lifnei kapara and liacher kapara. Now, what happens is that after the shechita, which is the first of the four avodos, and the dam is received in a mizrach, and then when it's brought to the mizbeach and sprinkled on the mizbeach, there's shirayim, there's a remainder of dam. Hu lifnei kapara kili acha kapara. So the word hu, according to Rabbi Yochanan, should be, it's like a link between lifnei kapara and liacha kapara. because the pasuk says lechapol nafshel sechem ki adam hu. So that's the kapara of the dam. Now, there's an equation being going on, and we have to see in which direction there is an equation between before the kapara, meaning before the zrikas hadam, and after the zrikas hadam. So Rabbi Yochanan chooses to go in the following direction. Mali achar kapara, ein bo me'ila, af lifnei kapara ein me'ila. Before he does the zrikas hadam, the dam is Lashem. It belongs to Hashem. Meaning it's now designated for zrika as part of the avodas hakorban. Liachar hakapara, it's already nases mitzvaso, meaning the mitzvah of zrikas adam was already fulfilled. And we have a principle in me'ilah that whenever there's nases mitzvasa, there's no longer me'ilah. So therefore, if the Torah with the word hu is equating the kapara lifnei and to liachar, then just like liachar, there's no me'ilah because it's already nases mitzvah. So too lifnei, there's no me'ilah. So the Gemara immediately objects. The emo, maybe it goes in the opposite direction. Why don't we suggest that if there's an equation through the word hu with lifnei and liachar, then maybe hu liachar kapor ki lifnei kapor. Right? The assumption logically is that before you zorik the dam, it's Lashem. It's part of the avodas hakorban, and there should be me'ilah, taking away from Hashem. So why don't we say that even li'achar kapara there should be me'ilah? And it's fascinating that Gemara even raises such a logical possibility that li'achar zrika there should be me'ilah on the shirayim, what's left over of the dam. That's a pella that has to be taken under advisement, but be that as it may, that's what the Gemara is suggesting, and therefore, if lifnei kapar there should be me'ilah, then there should be me'ilah by virtue of this equation, even liachar kapar. For the Gemara says, "Ein lecha," that can't be. Ein lecha davar shenasis mitzvah. We don't have any precedent in halacha. So argues the Gemara. We're going to see that there is such a precedent, that after the mitzvah is done, there still is me'ilah. Frek the Gemara v'lo v'arei trumas hadeshen, right? After the karbonos, or the emurim, I should say, are burnt on the mizbeach, so the ashes are collected in this round ball in the middle of the mizbeach, and then they're eventually taken out of the Beis Hamikdash, which is called trumas hadeshen. Now, when the Kohen does the truma, there's a special Kohen to do the truma, then you're not allowed to enjoy the benefits of that deshen, of that ash, even though it's already nasis mitzvah, so mol and bodechsiv, v'samo eitzal mizbeach. So it means that there's me'ilah even after nasis mitzvah, so in the case of trumas hadeshen, because what's deshen? Deshen is the ashes that are after the haktorah. So the haktorah is the mitzvah, and now we have the ashes. How could there be me'ilah? So the Gemara says that it says v'samo eitzal mizbeach. The Torah commands the Kohen to place the trumas hadeshen in a certain place, and that word v'samo generates me'ilah. It's a source for me'ilah. I think what the lumdus here of the Gemara is that it's not yet nasis mitzvah, because the Torah is telling you to do something and place the ashes at a certain specified location. Eitzal mizbeach. But right now, the Gemara doesn't seem to be actually satisfied with this, because the Gemara thinks that if the Samo Eitzal Mizbeach teaches you that there is Me'ilah in Trumas Hadeshen, then let that be a paradigm, let that be a binyan av, from which we should derive in general that even after Nasis Mitzvah, so there still is Me'ilah. And therefore, if the Dam Liachar Kapora was used to benefit someone, like, for example, he fed it to his dog or whatever it might be, then he should be in violation of Me'ilah based on the equation to Trumas Hadeshen, where Me'ilah applies even Liachar Mitzvah. So Gemara answers, Mishum dahavi trumas adeshin ubigdei kahuna, shnei ksuma bam kechen, ushnei ksuma bam kechen malamd. So the Torah says that the begodim of the Kohen after Balu means they, become worn out. So the Torah says there's still Me'ilah, right? Big Day Kahuna have the din of Kodshim, and you're not allowed to be Moel. And now we're saying that even after Balu, which means that the whole mitzvah of Big Day Kahuna was fulfilled already, nevertheless, there still is Me'ilah. So now we have two ksuvim that are teaching me the same thing, that even after Nasis mitzvah, so there still is Me'ilah. We have number one, Trumas Hadeshen, because it says V'somo Eitz Al Mizbeach. And now we have number two, we have Big Day Kahuna. So now we have a principle that whenever there are two psukim telling you the same thing, then it means those are exceptions to the rule rather than the rule. But again, we're going to soon see, as the Gemara always does, it's going to raise the opposite opinion that you do learn and universalize based on two ksuvim. But right now, the Gemara is saying, so the Chachamim of Rabbi Dosa hold that Big Day Kahuna, even after you fulfilled the mitzvah and the Kohen wore the begodim, etc., etc., nevertheless, they have to be placed in a certain location, which is called Geniza. Let me just see if he tells you where it is. No, he doesn't tell you. And that means that there still is Me'ilah. That's fine. But El Rabbi Dosa, the Yomer Shalish Tamish Behen, Biyoma Kippurim Acher, Rabbi Dosa derives from the Pasuk V'nichem Sham, a special halacha in Big Day Kohen Gadol and Yom Kippurim, which he only wore once a year. And the Torah says they have to be concealed and put away in a safe place so that next year the Kohen Gadol could wear those same begodim. But we don't derive from V'nichem Sham that there is Me'ilah. So Ma'ikal Meimar, you're left with only one pasuk, namely the pasuk of Trumas Hadeshen. You're left with Trumas Hadeshen, and now Trumas Hadeshen should become the paradigm that even after Nasis Mitzvah. So Ella, so the Gemara says, Mishum Davi Trumas Hadeshen Vegla Rufa Shnei Ksuma Bom Kech Shnei Ksuma Bom Kech Malamtin. Now, where do we know that Egla Rufa is subject to Me'ilah even after Nasis Mitzvah? So this is based on a pasuk in Dvarim Perek Chaf Aleph, right? So the whole story where you find a slain body between two cities, and it says V'yofru Shamas Egla Banachal, and the word Sham teaches me that even after there was a rifas ha'egla, which means they decapitate the calf, nevertheless it has to be put in a certain place, and you're not allowed to benefit from it. It's got to be in the Nachal Esan. So now we have another case where the mitzvah was already done because the arifas ha'egla was implemented, and yet the Torah says it's awesome mishum me'ilah. So hanichlam the Omer shnei ksuvim bon kechrei melamdin alamad the Omer shnei ksuvim bon kechrei melamdin Michael Omer. This is a classic. And now the Gemara is going to have to square with that Madiyam who says that shnei ksuvim bon kechrei melamdim,